Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something that's probably sitting right on your desk right now. We're totally unraveling the hidden economics and, honestly, the digital traps behind your surprisingly cheap home printer. Let's get into it. Okay, I want to kick things off with a number that is just frankly mind-boggling. $8,000. Consumer testing groups have actually sat down and calculated that printer ink can cost up to $8,000 per gallon. I mean, just think about that for a second. That is wild. Seriously, when you break down the math by volume, the liquid inside that tiny plastic cartridge frequently costs way more than the absolute most luxurious perfumes or the finest wines on earth. So it really reveals a hard truth here. That brand new $40 printer you grabbed on sale, yeah, it's not a bargain. It's actually a trap. Which brings us to part one, the $40 illusion, the hardware trap. Seriously, how can a machine packed with motors, circuit boards, scanners, and all these complex moving parts cost less than a nice dinner out? Well, the answer lies in what economists call razor and blades pricing. Basically, it's a revenue model where a durable product, think of it as the razor, is sold at a super low price, sometimes literally at a loss. And why do they do that? To drive sales of a highly priced consumable, the blades. This was actually pioneered over a century ago by companies like Gillette with their safety razors and Kodak with cheap cameras and really expensive film. So in our case, this model means your printer hardware is just a delivery vehicle. The real product, it's the ink. Now, academically and strategically speaking, this isn't just some sneaky trick somebody came up with overnight. No, it's a deeply well-established business model. The whole goal is to entice you, the consumer, with a super low upfront cost to build up an installed base. And then, once you've got the machine on your desk, they essentially lock you into purchasing highly profitable replacement parts over the entire lifetime of that machine. And the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't some wild internet conspiracy theory, right? HP CEO Enrique Lors literally stated plainly at the World Economic Forum in Davos that the company loses money on the hardware and makes money on the supplies. He just said it. In 2024 alone, HP's printing division generated a staggering $17 billion in revenue, and that was built almost entirely on the back of ink and toner sales. But here's where the story gets much, much darker. The digital lock-in, protecting the monopoly. Because you see, these companies don't just rely on your brand loyalty to keep you buying their expensive ink anymore. Oh no, they forcefully protect this incredibly lucrative model using technology. HP calls their version of this dynamic security. It's essentially this hidden firmware layer just quietly running inside your printer. Here's how it works. Step 1, you insert a new cartridge, and the printer immediately communicates with HP servers. Step 2, it checks the cartridge for an official HP authentication chip. And step 3, if it doesn't pass verification, boom, the printer outright blocks it. And we're not talking about a polite little warning pop-up here. It is a total block of any unapproved, cheaper third-party competitors. You just can't use them. This strategy spirals into some truly aggressive firmware tactics, many of which have actually been dragged into the light by class action lawsuits. For instance, silent firmware updates have been pushed to millions of printers entirely without user consent. So people who had been happily and perfectly legally using cheaper third-party ink for years just suddenly woke up to printers that flat out refused to work. Crazy, right? Furthermore, investigations have shown that ink level sensors sometimes flag a cartridge as completely empty while it still has perfectly usable ink left inside, which forces you to replace it early. And as if that wasn't enough, lawsuits allege that right after blocking the cheap alternatives, these companies then went ahead and raised the prices of their own brand ink. So, if you take away nothing else from this explainer, let it be this. Dynamic security is not a security feature. It is a revenue protection feature. Plain and simple. These digital locks serve exactly one real purpose, and that's ensuring you, the consumer, absolutely cannot escape the massive thousands of dollars per gallon markup on their original branded ink. Which naturally brings us to the next evolution of this whole industry, the subscription trap. You don't own your ink. See, as the overall hardware market shrinks, these manufacturers have found a brand new way to ensure you just keep on paying. They're shifting away from selling you ink cartridges outright, and instead, they're charging you a recurring monthly subscription fee just for the right to print pages in your own home. To really wrap your head around this, think of it like a gym membership. You know how a gym profits the most from members who diligently pay every single month but rarely actually show up to work out? Well, subscription programs like HP Instant Ink rely on that exact same economic structure. They charge you a predictable, recurring monthly fee based on a page limit. If you print 0 pages that month, guess what? You still pay the fee. It completely converts an occasional, need-triggered purchase, like buying ink when you actually run out, into the steady, reliable, low-effort revenue stream for the company. But what's truly shocking about this model is what's buried deep in the actual terms of service. When you sign up, those handy little cartridges that arrive in the mail, yeah, they're licensed to you, not sold. Meaning if your credit card payment fails for whatever reason, the cartridge just stops working, even if it is physically entirely full of ink. They literally have a remote kill switch on the physical object in your house. And if you cancel the service, the company expects those cartridges to be returned or disabled. Any remaining ink that is physically sitting inside your home is just forfeited, because at the end of the day, it remains their property. And the raw numbers show us exactly why they're pushing this so hard. HP's overall printing revenue peaked at around $20 billion back in 2021, and it's actually declined to $17 billion by 2024. The hardware market is undoubtedly shrinking, but they've managed to lock in over 11 million Instant Ink subscribers. Those 11 million subscribers are generating a $500 million business that's growing at 30% a year. So they are absolutely crucial for stabilizing that sweet, recurring revenue while physical hardware sales continue to drop. Okay. Let's take a collective breath here. Is there a way out of this mess? Breaking the cycle, escaping the terminal. You'll be happy to know that, yes, thankfully, there are market alternatives out there that are actively rejecting this whole razor and blades, digital lock-in nonsense. First off, let's just consider the technology itself. If you're someone who is printing mostly text, a laser printer is an incredibly powerful alternative. Now, yes, the upfront cost for a laser printer and its toner is definitely going to be higher than your basic $40 inkjet, but you've got to look at the long game here. The cost per page for an inkjet sits somewhere around 20 cents, whereas laser toner drops that down to just 6 cents. Plus, an inked cartridge might last you, 500 pages before it completely dries out? A toner cartridge easily hits 2,000 pages. So simply paying a bit more upfront drops your costs absolutely drastically in the long run. It's a game changer. Another really excellent option is utilizing remanufactured cartridges, like the ones from Clover Imaging. Now, assuming your printer's firmware hasn't maliciously locked you out already, switching over to high-quality remanufactured supplies totally bypasses those massive national brand markups. We're talking about cutting your printing costs by up to 30%. And plus, as a really great bonus, you're actively reducing landfill waste and pollution by reusing those plastic housings. So it's a win-win. But honestly, perhaps the most fascinating shift is coming from right inside the industry itself, totally breaking the old mold. Epson effectively just abandoned the traditional razor and blades model with their EcoTank strategy. Instead of those tiny DRM-locked cartridges, they use high-capacity refillable ink tanks. So you pay a higher but fair price up front for the printer hardware, but in exchange you get drastically lower ongoing printing costs and, best of all, zero cartridge anxiety. And you know what? The market has completely spoken on this. Epson recently surpassed 100 million cumulative global sales of these high-capacity ink tank printers. It proves people are absolutely willing to pay for the hardware up front, as long as they aren't getting completely gouged on the ink later. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought here. I want you to literally take a look at the machine sitting on your desk right now. Is your printer an actual tool that you truly own and control? Or have you simply purchased a heavily monitored subscription terminal that just exists to extract a recurring fee from your wallet? Thank you so much for joining us for this one, and as always, stay curious.